All right. I know, mine were lame. I put it off because I was so busy, and I was hungry. So when I sent her back my answers, they were pretty lame. I'll think of better ones next time for the three things. Okay, today we're doing something different. So although their variety is the spice of life, and when it comes to the natural world, we absolutely love the fact that it's filled with variety. It's filled with amazing plants, phytochemicals. You know, we love the term herbalomics. We love the microbiome. Everything about what I in particular love is the variety, the plethora of amazing things we have at our fingertips to change lives, to change our own lives. But we're going to take a little course correction today. And that course correction involves something that really kind of narrows that variety for a very particular purpose. And there's two aspects of that. And I want, by a raise of hands, how many of you in this room know and practice either fasting, it can be any kind of fasting, time, calorie, whatever, fasting, and or ketosis, by the raise of hands, in your own practice with patients. Fantastic. So you guys will come back into play with me at the end of this discussion because we're going to do some clinical pearls together. I'm not going to be the only one doing it. Well, when you think about those two concepts, and I'm not a big fan of, and nor was I really bought into the idea of ketosis and fasting beyond some of the more spiritual and other aspects that it brought to us, because it is a narrow way of looking at things. However, what we have found over the last few years, both from a internal, energetic, spiritual world and from a scientific standpoint, that both of those concepts, in fact, if we want to talk about variety, the variety that we can now apply to things like fasting, intermittent fasting, time restricted, and ketosis, and the combination thereof, which I want you guys all to write this down. Let's now call that metabolic flexibility. How does that sound? I think it's a much better term, and I think it defines, in a personalized way, you can take any one of those tools and apply it to your clinic, your people, your patients individually. Although the ketosis and the fasting regimens, somewhat narrow in scope, they have beautiful therapeutic effects. They are functional and therapeutic, and that can no longer be avoided. We now have amazing bits of data, scientific research. So I'm really grateful that although the early pioneers in this field stuck to the research and uncovered how powerful some of these tools can be. That is why I'm here today, because it's no longer acceptable to ignore the therapeutic value that we can take responsibility for. Furthermore, the reason you're going to be introduced to some products later on is because we at Systemic Formulas want you to have the tools that if we don't provide you, your patients will go elsewhere to get those tools. They will go elsewhere to get information and supplements for ketosis and for the different fasting regimens. So why not give you guys these tools? And they're clearly now more supported by clinical research than they ever have been in the history of those particular applications. So we now have some really fun science to talk about today. Are you guys ready for some science? How many of you are here from the East Coast? You're welcome. We just brought our seminar 50 miles closer to you. Okay? You're very welcome for that. Let's get this going. All right, so here's some of my objectives today. I really should have titled it, I titled it Advanced Cellular Metabolism because I gave it a title before I came across or somehow evolved the term metabolic flexibility. And I really think as we go through this talk, that'll be more meaningful because that's what we want. We want to be flexible. We want to know what's going on with our glucose, our glycolysis, our ketogenesis, our ketolysis, and things that you'll see today. It's very flexible. And your body's amazing when you give it the right tools. So here's our objectives. Ketogenic Refresh. So what is that? That's just me going over some of the simple concepts of ketosis. You've all had it. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm also hopefully going to prep a little bit of this for later speakers like Dr. Pompa and Sarika and Jack, because I want them to touch on these concepts. And Dr. Bomba touches on these often, so I'm going to try to keep it simple early on, because you guys, many of you have been exposed to these dietary interventions, and I won't spend a lot of time on them. But we'll do a little refresh, talk about ketone bodies, do a little ketone physiology. It's important, I think, and the biochemistry, I couldn't avoid that. You know me. You guys have to have the biochemistry, right? That's where you're going to have to get your notepad out. You're going to wish you had the school table around you. All right. Yeah. We'll make these available for later, these slides, so you won't have to do that. Finally, we want to talk about some of the therapies and how we apply them, because I am bringing a very unique, I want to bring a very unique slant to this. I don't want to just regurgitate what the world is doing in this field. I want to bring the cellular piece to bear here, and there's a really key component to this, and that's the detox piece. And again, you'll have other speakers pick up where I left off and really get into more detail. And all of the things, the amazing things that can come from this. And then finally, solutions. That's where you're going to interact with me, interact with each other maybe, and we're going to talk about some clinical interventions, a way we can apply some of the products that we have at our disposal, along with these dietary. So let's look at this really quickly. Simple slide. What are the traditional diets? Oftentimes we think of traditional diets as the old pyramid. Does everybody remember the pyramid? Yeah, the pyramid. You know, Nicole mentioned a funny TV show that she likes. There was an old show when I was a kid too, and I think the people that created that show were on psilocybin or DMT, and it was called HR Puffin Stuff. Do you guys remember that? That was psychedelic. Those were psychedelic writers and creators, I tell you. Those old pyramids, those old shows, they remind us that we didn't have it right, did we? We did not have it right. And of course, I'm not going to get into the politics of all that, but clearly the fact that we in this room and people in this industry have stayed the course to redefine what a pyramid should look like and how we should employ that regardless of what they're teaching in nutritional schools, and, elementary schools, etc. That's a really key component to what you guys do, is we don't falter, we don't give up, we don't quit. And that's an amazing aspect of what we do. We're going to have to keep doing it. I'm telling you right now, to push forward to protect our turf, so to speak. And you're going to continue to see that in our world. So thank you for doing that. The traditional diet was all carbs. Remember, the base of the pyramid is huge, carbs. Giant carbs, protein, a little tiny fat at the top. Right? We have to turn that on its head, of course, and there's been a lot of people showing you that. But that's the traditional. What is a keto diet? You all know this by heart by now. You're really introducing many, many more healthy fats. And you're also bringing in protein, and then finally carbs. I want to make a note here, and I'll get back to this later. But just because your patients are, and the mainstream media presents this now, they're presenting keto diets, are they not? It's everywhere. Where you still have the responsibility, and really you have not only the responsibility, but the accountability, is to take those three groupings, the fat, the protein, and the carb, and do something with them, because there are so many terrible ways to implement that diet. And that's why you're hearing worse keto flu, worse 9-month wall. The keto wall now is what you're hearing. I don't know if you guys have heard that. That's because of the shoddy ingredients going into this kind of process. The shoddy diets, just because it's fat doesn't make it right. Just because it's a protein doesn't make it right. So there's some work here that, of course, we took into consideration, and you do too, and you guys, of course, do. Well, how do we get into this in a physiological state? Ketosis is nothing new. It's a very, very old concept. I'm not going to give you the history, but it goes way back. They were defining ketotic states even back into the 1800s, and maybe further back, not defined as ketosis, but knowing watching physiology, watching the way urine changed, etc. But there's a number of ways to get into the state of ketosis physiologically. You got fasting, starvation. The reason I put that on there, that's not on purpose, right? That's accidentally starving. Fasting is, of course, on purpose. That's purposeful. Neonatal. I don't know if you guys knew that all neonates, or most neonates, are actually in ketosis when they're breastfeeding. So it's something that as we're adapting to our new environment, we're in ketosis. We have post-exercise ketosis, low carbohydrate. These last two aren't necessarily physiological states, but I wanted to put them in here because as we define the biochemistry of fatty acids and ketones, the reason ketones are so important isn't because the rest of your body can't, other organelles can't process fatty acids, because they can, including muscle. Your brain cannot. The brain blocks fatty acids. The blood-brain barrier doesn't let fatty acids in, but it loves to allow ketones in, ketone bodies. That's critical, glucose or ketones. And then finally, with gluconeogenesis, and that's a key concept under regulations. Remember we talked about metabolic flexibility? We don't want to demonize things like gluconeogenesis. We want that to continue to happen even while we're in ketosis. It's critical. It's critical. If you're in ketosis and you're doing something that's aerobic and you want to push up a giant hill because you're Spartan like Nicole, you will still have glycogen stores even though you've been in ketosis for a while. And that's because of this gluconeogenesis. So it's important because it does rescue certain functionality. Also is important for parts of the kidney, sperm, brain under some circumstances. So there's a place for this flexibility that we need to talk about. Ketone bodies, what are they? Ketone bodies are, I'm not sure who defined them bodies. I think one of the discoverers, ketone body, I'm not sure how that comes into play. You know, maybe people that were in ketosis started looking better, so they called them ketone bodies, right? Maybe that's the concept there. I don't know. I'm not sure where that came from. I'm sure some chemist decided to do that. It was in the lab too long, really. So these ketone bodies, we can define them, and I left one off because it's really not that important, but we have acetoacetate's a really important one, and then we have D-beta hydroxybutyrate, DBHB. There's also one called acetone. Now that one can be used in testing, although it's not the most reliable, but acetone is a ketone body that your body produces. In fact, these guys can degrade into acetone. And when you're in ketosis for a while and you're in pretty high ketosis, you might get those acetone breath. You guys have had that. I'm sure you've tried that or smelled that. Once considered a simple metabolite for the brain, we're now recognized as this new, they have so many pleiotropic effects, and I'll get into that. Pleiotropic just means it's a variety, it's a plethora of effects. And that's what the amazing science has brought us. That's what I'm excited about this topic before, because I'll be honest, I am not someone that just prescribes to a diet. That's just not who I am. I'm more of an herbalomics, therapeutic herbs, genetics, microbiome. That's my favorite world to live in. However, this is amazing because it actually coincides, or it's part of having a healthy microbiome, having a healthy herbalomic component to your life. So it is interplayed. And I have a nice echo up here. You guys hear that? Yeah, right on. So there really is an amazing number of pleiotropic effects that are scientifically valid. And that's pretty good, you guys. I don't know of too many metabolic flexibility diets that are so well validated clinically and scientifically. That's pretty amazing if you think about it. Over the course of how many diets have people in the United States and Europe gone through since I was a kid? I mean, you guys, every weekend on TV, there was some new diet fad. Or the radio, if you're old enough, you turn on the radio. You know, the Ovaltine diet started. You know, I mean, there's so many, and this is not a gimmick. This is not a fad. This will persist. It is valid, and that's critical to know. You guys may already know that, and I'm speaking to the choir. That's okay. Alternate fuel source. Yeah, there's ketosis, or ketones are used by not just us. They can be used by microbes in your GI. They're produced by microbes in your GI. You have a number of organisms, if you're healthy, if you have a nice healthy microbiome, that produce butyrates. And they feed your colon cells, among other things in your body. So this is not a unique science. It's really amazing. They're water-soluble. That's critical for the brain part, right? The fatty acid we talked about, they have to be water-soluble. That's critical. That's a feature chemically that makes them so important to us. The anti-catabolic effects, there's a number of things we'll get into deeper, but they really can, under normal conditions, barring any other hormonal and other issues, and we'll get into the specialty of this work, and at the end I'll invite you guys to play. They have some amazing demonstrated effects that weren't believed. So there's a lot of myths surrounding ketones. Those myths are being debunked almost on a weekly basis by researchers. So it's pretty fun. Okay, benefits of ketone bodies. I've got another slide you'll see in a second, but we have weight loss. We got antioxidative, raising glutathione is just one area of antioxidative. It's also it also is an inhibitor of what we call histone deacetylases, et cetera. So there's a lot of ways that it can become an antioxidant or reduce inflammatory markers. It can repair intermitochondrial membranes, and this list is a short list. ATP, oxidation of insulin, it creates insulin sensitivity, which is a whole big long process, and it has an epigenetic effect. Have you all, do you guys want me to clarify epigenetic? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it today, but you remember you're born with a certain blueprint, your DNA, and that makes you 99.999. We're that similar, you and I. So if we were to genetically test each other, we have a lot of similarities. Where we deviate from many of those similarities is our epigenetics, and that is how your body expresses. It's a memory on top of the DNA that you get from your parents, you get from your environment, you get from your nutrition that really dictates what color eyes you may have, what kind of predisposition to certain diseases you may have, or health conditions, etc. Epigenetic is now under the control of course, your diet. We've known that. But ketones are a critical part of that epigenetic game. And that could be a whole seminar in itself. Okay, now getting into some of the biochemistry. You guys ready to put your pencil to paper? It's easy. This is easy stuff. Fat metabolism starts off with what's called beta oxidation. And almost all of your tissues, all of the cells in your body can do beta oxidation. That's where you take a large chain, fatty acid, and a fatty acid is made of carbons and hydrogens. And you can think of them as a chain. If I cut that chain into two linkages at a time, so I cut it every 2 linkages, that chain, I'm making what's called acetyl-CoA right here. And if I keep cutting that, those little acetyl-CoAs, that's one of your ketones, remember that? Those can be used and they can be pushed off into the citric acid cycle, electron train transport, et cetera, and make a whole bunch of ATP for you. It can also be combined with other things to make other molecules you hear about. These all have a role in biochemistry. We're not going to get into it. My point is that fat metabolism exists. Your body has access to it in almost every tissue. The brain is unique. The opposite of that, let's say we want to go the opposite direction. We want to, instead of taking fat into energy molecules like ATP as the endpoint, we want to make sugar from things. That's called gluconeogenesis. What can we make sugar from? What are the molecules we can regularly and actively make sugar from? Protein, amino acids. What else? And I'll hit these again later, but this is a really fun part. I learned some biochemistry here. I really did. That saying where if you think you know everything, you're crazy. Yeah, that's, the more I read, the less I know. What else can we make it from? You guys ever heard of the fact you can make it from lactic acid? Now that's amazing because when you're exercising and you're in ketosis, you can make sugar. And you store it as glycogen for that little burst of energy. What else can you make it from? You know that glycerol backbone that gets pulled off of the fatty acids, the triglycerides, and you pull off the fatty acids? That glycerol that remains can be turned into glucose. So there's all these things during ketosis that actually lead to some glucose production because you're metabolically flexible when you're doing it correctly. That's the key. All right, so that's gluconeogenesis. And the reason I want to bring that up is when I follow, of course, when I follow a lot of this keto fasting world, and it's moving so quickly that you have to really follow it. You have to keep up with it because it moves so quickly. Early on, this was demonized. You used to do things to prevent gluconeogenesis while you were either fasting or in ketosis. You used to actively try to prevent this phenomenon when in fact you don't have to. It happens innately, and if you give the right tools at the right time, it doesn't pull you out of ketosis at all. Not at all. It's a decision the body makes to help build up glycogen stores without ever raising glucose in the blood. So that's why I want to touch on it briefly. Ketogenesis occurs in the liver. It's transported. These are little transporters. You don't need to worry about that. But the liver makes all these ketones, and then they can, but they cannot be, the liver produces ketone bodies, but it doesn't metabolize them. So it still metabolizes glucose and glycogen stores and so on. Furthermore, once it's transported into the bloodstream and it gets up to the brain, it's transported into the brain by these MCTs, monocarboxylate transporters. It also transports lactase and pyruvate. That transporter works on all three. The ketones, butyrate, acetoacetate, lactate, and pyruvate. They all get transported into the brain via that transporter. That's important because if you're high in lactic acid and you're not converting that into sugar readily, so if you have patients that might be athletes and they find that they're building up lactic acid and it's not converting quickly, it's going to affect to some degree the transport of ketones into their brain if they're also in ketosis and they're building lactic acid, and it can be an issue. Again, we'll get back to the clinicals of these later, and I'll let you guys tell me some of your notes. And then, of course, all of the ketone metabolism happens in the mitochondria. Do you guys know about the mitochondria by now? I know we've been speaking about the mitochondria. I know Dr. Pompan has been speaking about the mitochondria since like 2006. So if you've heard us talk, we have totally bored you on the mitochondria. Multiple times. Yeah, you may have fallen asleep 3 or 4 times during mitochondrial talks. I apologize for that. But today it might come in handy because so much of this is where the magic happens, you guys. What else about the mitochondria is important? The other thing about the mitochondria that's important is it's not only where ketones go to have the magic happen, it's where sugar goes. It's where all the electron transport goes. It's the powerhouse of the cell. It's where everything happens when you need energy. For you to blink, for you to look at me, for you to listen, write, everything you do requires mitochondrial energy. So we really want to take care of our mitochondria because it also is the center of all these chemical reactions, which makes it extremely susceptible to toxins, to oxidative stress, to exogenous toxins from environment, et cetera, et cetera. So the mitochondria is central to this. And for me, that's important for you guys because we happen to have a number of important ingredients that we use to help the mitochondria. And we have for a number of years. And we'll get around to that. Okay, now really, how many of you have seen charts like this and turned the page quickly? How many? You know, be honest, I won't hurt my feelings. Yeah. These are sometimes tough to read. I have to tell you that ketogenesis is one of the easier ones, much easier than the Krebs cycle and sugar. Maybe that's our model. You know, you hear a lot of people that present on ketosis versus burning carbs. Ketosis is like electricity. It's clean, burning, helps you, with so many of these pleiotropic effects, whereas burning carbs is complicated. Maybe just the fact that the chart for carbs is 10 times as messy as the chart for ketogenesis. That should have been a clue, right? That we should have said, this is a nightmare. The body looks at it and says, that's a nightmare. I hate doing that. You know, your mitochondria are exhausted reading their own chart. But that could be. This one's not too bad. I'm going to walk you through it so that we can understand it a little bit, and that's my job. All right, so here's the liver. We have fatty acids. What's the first thing fatty acids do? They go through beta oxidation to create the acetyl-CoA. All right, these 2 carbon chains. And these are really important. These are amazing because they also affect things that I don't know if Pampa is going to get into or not, but having a lot of acetyl-CoA around and other things can affect autophagy. I won't have much time on that, but just remember that, okay? Because you might be able to ask him when he's in autophagy talks. And then he'll think you're really smart. Okay, acetyl-CoA. We combine 2 and we make this acyl and acetyl-CoA. Here in the mitochondria now, this can happen in cytosolic, it can happen in mitochondria either way. But now we have to enter the mitochondria, and now we make our, it's an HMGA, I'm not going to have to go through that with you, but furthermore, we go all the way down through ketone synthesis. Imagine a little arrow that takes you back up to the top here. I should do over here too, I've neglected you guys. We come down, big arrow that comes down, that comes from here all the way up. Now we have this HMGA-CoA, it's another intermediate molecule. So if you can imagine a fat going to some intermediate glob, that's what it's called. The HMG-CoA, that's coenzyme A. This is lyase. It's an enzyme that now converts it to acetoacetate. Acetoacetate then uses NADH to NAD, and someone was just talking about NAD to me today. There's where NADH comes into play. We use an NADH to make, finally, beta-hydroxybutyrate. We have acetoacetate, beta-hydroxybutyrate, and acetone. These are the 3, this little triad right here is your 3 ketones, ketone bodies, right there at the bottom, okay? So we can make them in the liver. This is what they look like. Now we can transport these out into the bloodstream for use in any tissue, any and everywhere. The cool thing about this is, one, remember, this all happens, the magic happens in the mitochondria. Furthermore, that's the slow step. So you can see that the slow step is regulated. This, to make ketones, the slowest step, there's two things that can interfere with that slow. There's more than this, but just for today, insulin can affect FOXA, which is a protein, will slow that down. So insulin slows down ketone body production, which is logical. That makes sense, right? But glycogen can actually speed it up. Or glucagon can speed it up. So there's a lot of hormone that come into play here. I won't spend a lot of time on them, but when you look at this, there's some really cool aspects of this process. I'm going to point out in a minute, the complexity of this process also tells you that a number of steps are happening. So for example, I'm going to build a house, and my house is the ketone. How many layers of things do I have to do to build a house? I have foundation. I then have electrical. Then I have HVAC, and then I have plumbing, and then I have the framing, then I have the wind. Do you see my point? Any process like this to build, whether it be glucose or a ketone, involves a number of steps, and that's going to become important in a minute, because that's where everybody else is missing the point when they're getting people into ketosis or into fasting, that these steps require a number of critical nutrients, very critical nutrients, and these people are hitting walls, they're having problems, they're falling out, they're ruining their hormones, and it's because they're not paying attention to the details. Just to get yourself into ketosis is not enough. In fact, it's dangerous. All right, back to my little charts for you. Now, what's the opposite of that? We just made ketones, but now we need to burn ketones for ATP. What good is a ketone if you can't use it? Here's how we're going to use it. We start off with the butyrate. We now reverse that NADH. Remember that NADH we used? We now make it again. We get back to acetoacetate, and you think to yourself, why would the body go to all this trouble? We already had acetoacetate. And then we made butyrate, and then we sent it into the bloodstream. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw this as a college student. Why are we reproducing something in the liver we already had? Now, I've told you the answer to that. What's the answer to that? When we already have acetoacetate from the liver, remember, we get acetoacetate and we make beta-hydroxybutyrate from it. But we've already made this in the liver. Why did we bother with this, beta-hydroxybutyrate? Why bother? What's the answer? There's one organ that needs this, the brain. Without us going through this process to make BHB, the brain doesn't have its ketone to do the job it needs to do. So that's why we seem like we're a silly body getting to here twice and remaking it twice. So we start in the brain, we get into the brain, this enters the brain, for example. We now make acetoacetate in the brain, and then we go further down this path and we make acetoacetate-CoA, ultimately acetyl-CoA goes into the TCA cycle, which is the tricarboxylic acid or the citric acid cycle, and we make a ton of ATP, a ton. It's clean. It's clean. Look how clean that is. Again, this is a beautiful way of getting energy out of the body in the form of fat. Everything I've just described started as a giant fat molecule, or a small one. You can take coconut oil, you can take the giant DHA, EPA, little, all the way down to the little guys. They can all do what we just described and end up in the brain making ATP. I thought I had a little ATP thing here. I don't know if I have it later. But essentially, you get from this process, you get 24 to 26 ATP, depending on where you shunt off this thing. 24 to 26 ATP from one section of the fatty acid. How cool is that? So fats are brilliantly energetic. Brilliantly energetic. From one chain of fat, you get 26 times whatever that chain is. That's the brilliance of burning these fats. All right, I know. We'll get on to the more clinical stuff, I promise. All right, I want to touch on this because in the end, I'm going to circle back to exogenous ketones because, again, it's something we've watched. And in fact, I've had discussions with Pampa. I've had discussions with maybe Jack, some others of you in the room where we kind of held we were a little bit put off by exogenous ketones, wondering where they were going to find their home in the world. I mean, do you remember those discussions years ago, Dr. Pomp? We're thinking, can we really use exogenous while we're not in ketosis? Is that going to confuse the body? And it turns out some amazing researchers, one of them is D'Agostino, has shown that there is a place for these things. So I want to circle back to them because there really is a place and a time to use exogenous ketones. And your body is smart enough to know how to manage. And by the way, an exogenous ketone is a ketone like a butyrate that we're adding to our diet. We're not making it in the liver. We're literally eating beta-hydroxybutyrate. Okay, that's it. That's what I'm terming an exogenous ketone. You're eating your ketones. You're not making them. So there's nutritional ketosis, and there's dietary ketosis. And there's maybe even some other terms. Maybe it's even called something else as well. That's exogenous. Endogenous refers to the ones we make. That whole pathway I just showed you. Those are endogenous ketones. You make them inside your body using fat. So what are some of the really cool aspects of both exogenous and endogenous? Well, exogenous ketones are thermodynamically advantageous and readily oxidizable fuel for skeletal muscle. So as soon as you eat them, they're readily uptaken by those. Do you remember the transporters we talked about, the MCT transporters? They're uptaken into all tissues to be burned immediately. So you can burn these things quickly, just like you would sugar, without any trouble with insulin. Skeletal muscle substrate metabolism is altered. You can increase fat oxidation. So there is by taking some exogenous ketones, and of course this is person-specific and it's situational specific, and we'll talk about that again at the end. But by taking, some people when they take exogenous ketones, it actually tells the body to start preparing for more of a ketosis, to burn fats more efficiently. It can be an initial sign of fat adaptation. And again, I'm hoping that Dr. Pomp and those guys will get into more of that. It's quite fascinating. And of course, that helps preserve a lot of the glycolytic work and intensities. So there's a number of ways you can take advantage of this. Athletes take advantage of it, whether you're a long distance or strength athlete. There's a lot of ways to take advantage of exogenous ketones. There's a new research out, and I don't remember if it was D'Agostino, but there's, and again, I think I have a slide that will tell you this later, but it's shown to actually reduce anxiety. Exogenous ketones affect some of the anxiety hormones and other pathways. So that's a fascinating little bit as well. So this metabolism during a low or moderate intensity exercise could be detrimental during short, high extension. So changes in substrate metabolism, I should read it all to you. During short and high intensity exertion, which relies on rapid glycolytic flux. This is where exogenous ketones can come into play. Supplementing gold standard post-exercise nutrition with a ketone ester may augment glycogen synthesis. This I found the paper on, I read it. I do believe it was done in animals, so I don't think it's been done in humans. It may have, I didn't find that. But this is leading to some curiosities. A lot of the exogenous has been done in animals, rats, some primates. So we are going to be making some assumptions. I should be very clear on that. Full disclosure. We think some of our bodies are going to behave the same way, but some of these studies are done in animals. We're starting to just get into human studies, which is fun. But some of these ketone ester positive attributes, I have to tell you they're from animals, and we're hoping that they do the same thing in humans. We think they will, but that's it. There it is. This is a referral. Exogenous ketones affect conversion of glutamate to GABA. Now remember, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's a calming neurotransmitter. Glutamate is an excitatory. So fight or flight versus so sympathetic, parasympathetic. That's what you're looking at here. So glutamate to GABA. Exogenous ketones affected that conversion. I don't think the full mechanism is understood, but it's important to know that exogenous ketones can change you from an excitatory state and slowly get you into a more calm state. I thought that was pretty fascinating. BHB is a histone deacetylase. I talked about that already. Kabuki has already been using it. That is a genetic disease, an epigenetic disease, and it's showing some significant clinical improvements in people with Kabuki. And we're talking about exogenous ketones. That's another really amazing clinical field to look at. NLRP3 inflammasome, it inhibits this inflammasome. This inflammasome is responsible for a number of immune diseases, autoimmune diseases. This inflammasome is something that's central to this. Won't time to that. Again, that's a whole talk in itself. But ketones affect inflammation in a number of important ways. That is one of them. So any of these, you guys, if you go and get into some research on these, you'll find some really amazing publications on these inflammasomes. Then it targets other ketone receptors. Yeah, who cares about that one? Okay, what are some of the therapies that are being employed? I thought this was pretty amazing. This has grown exponentially since I first looked at this. When we used to think of ketones, the reason it gained popularity is why? Why did we all want to get into ketosis? Not we all. Don't include me. Weight loss. I mean, and it works. It's amazing. However, there's consequences. But look at look what's happening in this therapy, and this is being done by some amazing researchers. You've got Volker, you've got Augustino, you've got the diet mimicking fasting, Longo. You got so many of these people that are contributing to this data, and it's amazing. So you got ketosis can contribute to type 2 diabetes, neurological function, clearly for epilepsy, but other neurological functioning, positive functioning. You've got weight loss, of course. Metabolic SNPs. There's a number of SNPs are genetic mutations in your DNA that affect an enzyme. Remember all those pathways, that crazy pathways showing you? If I were to take one of those pathways, for example, the electrician on that pathway that was supposed to put in the electrical, and I were to go in there and lop off his arms, it sounds mean. How fast is he going to get the electricity done in your house? Not very fast. So what mutations do is they lop off some of the activities of these enzymes, and it's hard to recover them unless you can come at a different angle. Turns out ketones are a different angle to do that. Later on, at our next digital event, you're going to hear more about these mutations because we're going to get into DNA mutations and tests the next time you join us. So I just plugged the next event for us. We're going to get into this. But yeah, you're lopping off, you're changing the DNA, which ultimately gives you a problem, right? And now some are more visible. If you have a mutation in your DNA as you're little and you grow, you might have grown up with missing a finger or something. These are real things to consider, and we're finding that something as simple as ketosis can help you recover from some of these genetic mutations. That's pretty amazing. Brain cancer, that was amazing. I think there was a speaker at I forgot her name, but that was an amazing story. PCOS, NAFLD, inflammation, type 1 diabetes. That used to be another myth. That was a taboo. Never put a type 1 diabetic into ketosis. Now, I don't know that the number of data points in that world is large yet, but it is happening. That they're finding some positive for type 1. That's a unique, unbelievable. Yeah, so motor function, you got your GLUT1 receptors and syndromes, Rett syndrome, etc. Autism, Parkinson's, anxiety, that comes back to the brain. The brain is critically involved in this ketogenic pathway, as well as fasting. I should always caveat what I'm telling you is that fasting and ketosis oftentimes go very much hand in hand under certain circumstances. That should be clear. Yeah. Well, that's just under neurological function. Yeah. Yep. All neurological function. I just kind of, this chart could be bigger. So, clinical significance. I want to do, this is kind of like a mid-talk summary is what this slide is. So let's get more into the clinical significance. Let's talk about the effect of combining all of these metabolic variations. Metabolic, what is it? Flexibility, metabolic flexibility. That's what this really defines. Autophagy, I'm not going to spend much time on that, but I do think it's important that I at least tell you that autophagy is a critical part of this story. And oftentimes, perhaps one of the more important fundamental aspects of getting into a decent fasting state is autophagy. I mean, it really should be one of the end goals for most of us, those of us at least over the age of, 18, because it'll help us live longer and healthier and so on. So yeah, I definitely love that one. And then the supplemental support. This is really, for me, that is the angle that, of course, the path I'm going to set you on. So it's, again, full disclosure. I want you guys to understand, and if I don't make it clear at the end of this, you have to ask questions, because in the end, I want to demonstrate that we have an opportunity not only to look at this metabolic flexibility and all the aspects of fasting and diet variation and ketosis and say, there are so many gaping holes nutritionally in what most people are doing along this. Let's fill those holes. Let's do our job and fill those holes with our tools. That's really that's the summary of my talk, really. Okay, adaptation. A lot of this, again, I'm reviewing much of what you guys have already learned. Many of you are probably very familiar with this. But for education's sake, it never hurts to repeat some of the information and learn it more, right? Because you might have to give a talk. Time-restricted feeding. So let's talk about adaptation. Adaptation really is a survival mechanism. If we were to throw you into, the show Naked and Afraid, you would have to adapt. You would have to, make underwear, make shoes, learn how to do things on your own. Adaptation really is a survival. And it turns out that not only are we instinctively and elegantly designed to adapt, every cell in your body, every being in your body is designed to adapt with stressors. And that's what's the old saying, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's an adaptation saying. Time-restricted feeding is much better than caloric-restricted feeding. I won't get into that. Hopefully that isn't too foreign for you guys. But that was a pretty amazing revelation as this ketogenic and fasting world evolved. That's a really nice revelation, I thought, that it didn't just stick with caloric restriction. Caloric restriction, turns out, these people went back and looked at, what's that show where they took people and they had them on like 16, what was it? Biggest Loser. They went back and did work with those people post, and I think there was a lawsuit because of it. They only applied caloric restriction, and it turns out what they did to those poor people is that extreme caloric restriction over long periods of time ended up really creating what's called thermogenic adaptation, or adaptation thermogenicity, either way. What that means is your body said, you know what, you're going to continue to restrict my food. I'm going to learn how to burn very little food from now on. So your metabolism went from here to here. And I know from talking to clinicians like yourself, you guys will get essentially obese people in your clinics, and if you run a metabolic panel, guess what? Their metabolism is actually quite high if they haven't been under caloric restriction. That's not their problem oftentimes. It's inflammation, insulin resistance, et cetera, et cetera. Their metabolism is considered above normal for obese people. You restrict those calories, their metabolism is going to go all the way down here. And then whenever they eat, whenever they do anything, even if they go into a fat diet, what they're going to do with that fat? Store every bit of it. So that was an issue. So I love the idea that we've gotten into this long-term. Of course, you guys have probably heard it. So efficacy of ketogenic diet on the body comp during resistance training, that's pretty amazing. That's part of the adaptation. Autophagy. Now, in autophagy, I'm going to mention this, and I hope I don't forget to come back to this, and if I do, someone will bring it up during our interaction phase. One of the amazing things about autophagy and the fasting protocols that you use, this is so critical, and I want to know, and this is over 13 hours of fast, and I think it's debatable. Some people say 13, some people even say 16, 24. I think it depends on the person. Yeah. And if you're fat adapted, this happens more readily. Yeah. So if those of you that get fat adapted and you've worked on your fat adaptation, your fasting, you can get into this state very quickly. If you haven't, and you have patients that have not been fat adapted, it could take them 24 hours, 72 hours. It could take them a long time to get to where they need to be in autophagy. Why did I put the word detox in parentheses? What is happening when you put yourself into ketosis and or a fasting state to where you've become dependent on burning fat? What are you actually doing inside your body? And Pampa, Jack, you guys can't answer this because it's cheating. Breaking up fat cells, tearing down. I mean, you're changing the apoptosis tissue. You're going from brown to white and then dumping that into the bloodstream as what? Fatty acids. What else are you releasing? Toxins. Yeah, toxins. And I can tell you that I believe that's an overlooked area outside of this room, likely. But in the rest of the world, that's an overlooked issue. I think a number of people that are complaining about issues, 50% or more, maybe more. I would only guess based on my experience. That's what they did. They fasted. They dumped a bunch of toxins into their bloodstream. They went into a crisis. Okay, forces up ketones. We know that. Drops inflammation. Now this, again, we all know that this is true, but this can actually be a problem over long periods of time under irresponsible conditions. If you're not using good fats, if you're not feeding the right fats to your patients in a fasting state, or even when you go into the refeed or when you break a fast, you can actually drive inflammation up even that wasn't your intention if you're not doing it correctly. So that's kind of the fun. And again, I'll leave that to other speakers. You can hormone optimize, but you can also wreck your hormones. Why? Am I beating a dead horse? That horse keeps running by and I'm kicking him. Because if you don't do it correctly, you're going to get the opposite effect. This is such a powerful tool. If you don't do it right, you're going to, instead of driving up sensitization of hormones, you're going to wreck hormones. Anybody have heard of kisspeptin? That's one of the first hormones that gets wrecked in a woman when you don't do it correctly. And kisspeptin is responsible for gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which is responsible for estrogen, testosterone, progesterone. You wreck the one upstream, everything downstream is a wreck. Okay, studies show growth hormone rises. That's kind of cool. So the cool thing about fasting is if you break the fast with the right nutrition, and we're going to get back to that at the end, what kind of amazing things can you do with the body at that point? You can actually you can build muscle. All right, diet variations. I'm not going to spend time on this. This is just for you guys' own reminders. There's a lot of ways to do it. This is just a snapshot of few. You can do the daily, weekly. There's the time restricted, some calorie restriction in some cases. It's a very personal approach for each and every one of you and your clients. This is just someone's snapshot. I probably stole this from one of you. It could even be Pompa. I could have stole it from Pompa. Yeah, so that's really, except I don't have his book. So I must have got it from one of his talks. He didn't give me a book last time I was with him. There was actually a footnote on here before. Yeah, there's a footnote there. Because that slide, I did that slide at Pompa's show, so I know the footnote was there. Protocol. Okay, what does DV stand for? Diet variation, intermittent fasting, ketosis. This is the grouping of what we can start calling metabolic flexibility. We have a new demand that's going on now. We're going to have a huge demand for micronutrients. Autophagy has its own demand for nutrients. So we have the demand to make ketones, to burn fats, all those enzymes you saw in the process. You now have a new demand for autophagy to happen. Chaperones are large proteins. They're not cheap to make. To make one chaperone protein, you're probably going to spend 1,000 ATP. So if you're having to build thousands of these chaperone proteins, your mitochondria are working overtime to get into this kind of autophagy. Detox. Does detox require a lot of energy to detox a body? Exorbitant amounts of energy. You're making all kinds of molecules to go through detoxification. It's energy and micronutrient high demand. That's where we've missed the boat. And then, of course, the microbiome. I always throw that in there. I might not even know why. I just have to throw microbiome on my slide. There might even be a reason. You're going to see microbiome on my slide. I could be talking about timeshare condominiums. And I'm going to throw in microbiome. And then I'm going to tell you that I can tell you if you're in that condominium because I can test it and match it to your microbiome. So it does have a purpose at every place you go. There is always going to be a link, always, to the microbiome. All right. I love the microbiome. All right. So cellular detoxification really sets our argument apart. It sets apart what we do. As a company, it's where our niche lies. And everybody in this room understands our detoxification world. You guys have all heard Dr. Pompa and I talk about the phases, about all of the different elements of detoxification. It's really one of the areas that makes us unique. And it turns out that this metabolic flexibility is intimately, it is the twin, it is the Siamese twin to detoxification, because I can tell you of the 5,000 plus and counting packages, prep, body, and brain that have hit patients and have been used. No, these are used. Patients have gone through over 5,000 packages. The majority of those patients were also working on a metabolic flexible condition. They were also in some sort of a fasting. It was in conjunction. In other words, those packages were used alongside a dietary intervention that we call metabolic flexibility. Whether it was the fasting, intermittent, time restricted, ketosis, etc. When we kept track of it, and Mike Reese at Systemic has helped me do this, most people using those packages are also using some dietary intervention like that, the metabolic flexible dietary intervention, which makes it extremely important for you guys to know that they really should go hand in hand. So whenever you're going to put somebody in a diet world, think about the detox side of things. Think about what it's going to take to keep them safe, even as you address other areas, which we'll get into at the end, like the microbiome. The detox still has to happen because every single one of those metabolic processes is going to free toxins from the fat tissue, is it not? Without question. Now, I put this up here just like I do the microbiome because I love cells. The three things I love are microbiome, cellular stuff, just everything. Cells are like the little New York City. They have everything. Every one of your cells is just amazing. It's like a little New York City, everything. And the last but not least is herbalomics, how herbs impact each and every cell differently. So I threw it up there so you guys know that. But all these processes going on in here, as you can see, it's New York City. Look at all the energy being consumed, all the things being made, all the highways being created, all the houses being built, skyscrapers, et cetera, et cetera. This is where we thrive as a company. That's why it's here. Okay, next piece. Maybe not. Does that work? Kick it? Well, I got the 0 zeros. That went funky. Woo! Reboot. That's rebooting, that isn't. Talk's over. I'm going to leave you guys hanging. You guys should have read the last page first. Too late now. It's like a book. You better read the ending. No chance. Let's cruise on. Where am I at? Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Oh, wait. No, wait. We want to go back and do this again. No, we don't. No, we don't. Here we go. All right, another one just like that. Huh. All right, this really is to highlight, you guys. I want to highlight the complexity, but the need for nutritional intervention, the need for the 1,000. For example, in the 3 packages, there is over 180 different herbs. There's like 40 different specific nutrients in combination. You can't beat that. You can't find that anywhere else on the planet. To address things like this pathway. Otherwise, your homework is to go home, understand all these pathways, and then you tell me what we should change in those boxes. That's what we'll do. We do actually make modifications to those boxes based on your guys' feedback quite often. In fact, Moore's has gone through, I think, 5 iterations over the last 10 years because of you guys. So G-Cell's gone through a couple. The last one was the blood tests where we measured glutathione in people and we adjusted the formula so that over a 6-week period we could watch glutathione increase in 36 subjects, human subjects. We do listen to you and change formulas occasionally. This really, it's so heavily nutrient dependent. This highlights oftentimes one of the most overlooked piece of this whole metabolic flexibility is please let's look at the small items that make the system run, that make each cell run, that make each cell capable of producing ketones, metabolizing ketones, etc. If you don't have all these things happening, you're going to run into the flu, you're going to run into the wall, you're going to run into people that have hormone dysfunctions, even though they've been in ketosis for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. We're missing. Ketogenic and fasting diets aren't working for everybody. That's becoming clear. You're seeing the retraction. You're now getting more people looking at what happens if we add fiber to ketosis or to fasting, coming out of a fast when you break. This process requires, there's over like 40 enzymes in there. Each enzyme in the energy pathways require the B vitamins. B vitamins, one of their main jobs in your body is to help you build ATP through the Krebs cycle, through the ketolysis, through the ketogenesis, through the electron transport chain. B vitamins are a cofactor. What other cofactors do we have? Magnesium, zinc, manganese, cobalt. All of the minerals become cofactors to make these things happen. Can we deplete them if we get into one of these metabolic systems and don't take care of us? What happens? We deplete them quickly. What are the first ones to go? Like the electrolytes, because the kidney starts dumping water, electrolytes are gone. Now you're having to hurry and give people electrolytes, etc. This is where we want to be focused the rest of my talk. So the magic for detoxification happens, and it requires so much energy and so many of these cofactors and so many of these micronutrients. It all happens in the endoplasmic reticulum. You've heard me say that. I've given that talk before. I don't want to spend a lot of time. The endoplasmic reticulum is an organelle inside the cell that's responsible for phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. You guys heard those 2 phases? So in every tissue that's responsible for detoxification, it has a giant endoplasmic reticulum, and it makes it bigger when you are detoxing, by the way. So you can actually measure in animals when you introduce them to toxins like rats or humans, you introduce a toxin into their environment, you can watch the liver's ER grow by over 50% as they're trying to detox. It's all membranous as well, meaning that you're going to need a lot of fats, a lot of good fats. You're going to need it in the right ratios because you've got to make miles of membranes. Every cell in your body has at least 30 feet of membrane. Could you imagine 30 feet of membrane inside the cell? That's from me to the back of the room. Every cell. We've got to worry about the endoplasmic reticulum. It also does a lot of other jobs, like the phase 1, phase 2, it releases peroxisomes. It also releases something called exosomes. And that's another talk that I have to give again about cancer and exosomes. We'll do that later, but it's responsible for those. It also coincides with mitochondrial function. So the ER and the mitochondria are tied together. If the mitochondria is unhappy, the ER is unhappy, and vice versa. If the ER can't get rid of toxins, the mitochondrial becomes toxic and starts to fail. So there's this intimate relationship between the two. I know this is a lot of biochemistry, but you guys have heard a lot of those terms before. ER may be new, it may not. But inside these cells, you've got to be cognizant of both mitochondria now and ER, because ER is all your detox. Peroxisomes, what does it do? Well, it's responsible in every cell for beta oxidation. You guys heard that term before? What's beta oxidation? Breaks down fats. So if you don't have a healthy ER and the peroxisome that it produces, you're not going to start the very first step in burning fat. So if your ER is in trouble, you can't start the first step in fat burning. You're stuck. You're just going to store that fat. You can't initiate the whole ketogenic process. So if you have people that you're trying to get them into ketosis or into a fasting ketosis, and they resist, think about this process right here. The endoplasmic reticulum, which requires energy and love from all the micronutrients and toxins. They could be toxic. Likely they are. What else does it do that I want it? Lipid biosynthesis. It makes all your lipids. Bile acid synthesis, etc. It's central to the role of fat burning. So if it's unhealthy, you're not burning your fat healthy. Detox and ketosis consume nutrients and burn ATP. That's pretty straightforward. These are some of the detoxing tissues. Not going to, skin, there's others. You guys know that as well as I do. Furthermore, we have a number of dietary. So how do we make it better? I'm going to turn the corner on you now. Now we're getting close to our interactive stage. We've gone through the process of understanding what ketosis is, all the different ketone bodies, how they relate to metabolic flexibility. I've gotten into the cell and how the cell is responsible for all this process. Inside the cell, it's your endoplasmic reticulum, the lysosomes, the peroxisomes, etc. You've gone into the cell. Now let's take a step back out of the cell, and let's play a game here in a second. We want to talk about how do we now support what I've mentioned this entire time. How do we support ketosis, fasting, intermittent, diet variability, time restricted, etc.? How do we go about creating protocols that you can give to your patients using systemic formulas? Here's the first game we're going to play. So let's talk about detox first. As you can see, everything I've just summarized is on the right, and everything that we can employ to handle that is on the left. So this is detoxification. These are all the boxes. These are new. We'll get to this in a second. Prep phase, body phase, brain phase. And when I say clinically studied, that's the G cell and the bind. Those two have been run through of more clinical ringers. I mentioned the one about the glutathione increase. You guys are going to have to participate with me, so you don't get to just be standing there looking at me anymore. Sitting there looking at me. Ketabo Shake. We'll get into this in a second, but I want to play this game before I tell you what that's about. Ketabo Shake is a shake that is designed around the principles that we want to have for a nice keto meal replacement. Does that make sense? Which means it's what? It's higher in good fats, like grass-fed, grass-finished butter, high in MCTs, etc. Medium protein. In fact, some of you requested, and I think Dr. Pompa was one of the more vocal, keep the proteins under what? Under 20. Why would I want to keep the proteins under 20? Say that again? It's low enough. You can even be a little higher for the gluconeogenesis, but yes, that's one answer. What's another answer for why I want to keep them pretty low? I want to make sure that product doesn't kick you out of autophagy when you're either coming out or in, and you're using it in a ketosis fast, where you're doing a time restricted, but you're still eating. You don't want to kick somebody out of autophagy, and a high protein will do that. Let's see, what else we got? Extracellular ketones. That makes sense. A lot of the world calls them exogenous. We call them extracellular. Why? Because we love cells. So they're extracellular, extra special, right? They get to ride the short bus. That probably wasn't politically correct. I don't know. I'm old. We used to play a lot of dumb games when we were kids. Sorry. So that's the first two. These other ones are the detoxification packages. So let's match them up. If I want to look at a Ketabo shake, what am I going to be looking at on this right side? It's pretty straightforward. What am I looking at here? Ketosis. Let's just partner that one there. How about extracellular ketones? Maybe a little harder. I put it in there. There's a lot of reasons to take them. You guys saw some of the reasons. But what am I trying to do with extracellular ketones? Yeah, boost. We want to boost them up for a lot of reasons. You might need to. Should we do a ketone boost? And this is a tough question. No, we'll get to that later. Prep phase. What's prep phase good for? What are we trying to prep our body for? Actually, let's step back from prep phase. Let's look at each of the ingredients or each of the products. Vista. What's Vista good for? Membrane. Thank you. Where is that? Mitochondria. That's E-energy. Sorry. I left the membrane off there, didn't I? Shayne. Moore's methylation. Good call. MBC. Microbiome. L. Liver. That's phase 1 and phase 2, right? K. What's K? Kidney. But what else does kidney do? Phase 3. That's elimination. You guys have heard of phase 3, right? Elimination. It's K kidney. We love L and K. Let's go down here. How about Vista? We know that one again. Moore's energy. We just did that. How about G cell? Glutathione. Bind. What is bind good for? I'm going to say elimination. Yeah. Good call. There's probably more than one answer on here for you guys. We did Moore's, G cell. Min. What's min for? Yeah, thanks. I didn't put that on there. Mineral replenishment. Under both detox and these dietary interventions, you lose minerals like crazy. Let's see. Alpha-lipoic acid. That's brain DTX. I don't know why it's ALA there, but brain DTX. That's an interesting one. That's a tough one. What do you guys think? Instead of brain DTX, I put ALA so you could help maybe solve that one. What's ALA good for in brain DTX? What would you guys use it for? Yeah, a lot of brain detox, right? Getting into the brain and other things. And then bind. So that's a little game I want to play because you guys are going to have to be more interactive in a minute. You thought that was it? No, not it. Not it. So the Ketabo shake, how do we design it? How do we want to take something that is now years old? The ketosis world is years old. There's a lot of options, a lot of choices. And we want to give you guys a choice so that your clients don't go where? Amazon. Amazon's like the new, Amazon's the place for things like Dr. Google. right? You got Dr. Google and Amazon now. They go to Amazon to buy their stuff, and they go to Dr. Google to learn how to use it. I don't know. But we didn't want that to, we wanted to give you a higher quality, unique. We wanted to cover all of the good fats. We didn't just use MCT or butter alone, and most of them, we bought a whole bunch. We did the taste panels. You know, you guys know I always harass people with that, right? We've been tasting things for weeks and weeks and causing people to get sick, you know. And by the way, you can overdo exogenous ketones. You forget when you're taste testing. It's like wine tasting. They keep bringing it. Pretty soon you're like, where am I? You know, exogenous ketones, you're tasting, you know, so they bring you a little cup of it. Well, that's, 5 grams. And they bring another cup, 5 grams, 5 grams, 5 grams, 5 grams. 300 grams later, you're like, why don't I feel right? That's the next product. So exogenous ketones, but Ketabo Shake, we really wanted to take what's known scientifically, get the most clinically studied ingredients, get the best ingredients, and we wanted to take fats that had a variety. So we have a bunch of plant fats here. We don't just have the butter and the samples. Yeah, okay, I'll tell them a second. Do you want to hand them out now, or do you, let me, hold on. Yeah. Let's hand them out at the thank you, because after the thank you is the rest of the interaction. Right? These guys aren't off the hook yet. Where was I? All right, Ketabo Shake. So we did want to take what's currently known in the world of ketosis and fasting, the science, the best science we could to date, and find the best ingredients to support that. So for example, when you're supporting a healthy fat intervention, you don't want all saturated or a single fat. You want some complexity, because the body needs that complexity. So we have a number of plant oils in there: hemp, chia, I can't even remember them all. Oh, there they are. Borage, hemp, phosphatidylcholine, chia. We've got, and the coconut is the MCTs, and we have grass-fed finished butter. And these are the highest, by the way. These two are the highest. And we like that because high MCTs has a number of beneficial values, just like the butter does in a different way. But MCTs have also been shown to drive up, not only drive fat burning, so have that catabolism of fat, but also drive up epinephrine or the catecholamine response. So you can build and burn simultaneously. It's kind of cool with MCTs or coconut oil. Furthermore, we use collagen protein and also cranberry protein. Low in branch chain that we're going to trigger or get you out of ketosis or get you into any, out of autophagy, et cetera, if you're using it under those conditions. And low in, no insulin response from those proteins. They're very low in the branch chain that would trigger that. Furthermore, we wanted low carbohydrate. The carbohydrates, most of the carbohydrates in this formula are carbohydrates that we ask them to spray around the oils. So we made little mice cells almost, so that the oils are trapped. Now, what that does, two things for us. One, it traps the oil so that you're not taking a powder oil mixture. It also protects it from oxidation. So it keeps it protected for longer periods of time, so you don't have that oxidation process happening. That's really the only carbohydrates in this formula. So it's really high in fat, medium protein, low carb. And it's complex carbs, no simple. We sweeten it with the combination of stevia and lohan. And it's vanilla. The label, a lot of times the label will say natural flavors. We don't play that game. I know that some people are worried about that game of natural flavor means like MSG or whatever. I apologize if it's on there. Sometimes we run out of room to list the number of flavors we use. We might use 4 different natural vanillas, and it's silly to natural vanilla from Madagascar, natural vanilla from Senegal, that kind of thing. We just natural flavor sometimes. But no, we don't have any of those other games at all. In fact, we do a lot of testing. And then we have an innovative blend for bioavailability. But you'll see another number of ingredients on there, like bioperin or the fermented peppers and ginger and other things that we help make it bioavailable. And the one thing did I put on here? No, I didn't. Oh yeah, I did. We have the organic vitamin and mineral, the plant-based vitamin and minerals in this. Now, when it comes time, after I get to the thank you part and we start our other game, you can taste it. I'll have you guys taste it. Because my goal at the end of this weekend is to put 20 pounds on every one of you. No, I'm kidding. That's not my goal. But it really is. And again, we will keep up with the science and make alterations as they need. But we wanted to start offering this to you guys because I think it's time. I think it's time to make sure we have this tool. The next one is the extracellular ketones. So we have all of the four. We used all four electrolyte butyrates, BHBs. We have what's called this one's acetoacetate. That is actually considered an ester. And then the flavor profile, we love the flavor profile, but in order to mask, who here has eaten exogenous ketones? Or now you're going to have to start calling them extracellular. They have a nasty flavor for the most part. So we had to mask that, and it's a very citrusy, kind of a, lemony kind of citrusy flavor. But I think it does it. But my warning is, okay, so my caveat or my warning is, if you take the scoop in a little bit of water, it's going to be a lot more tart than if you take the scoop and put it in a little bit more water. Is that clear? That's kind of the warning. I think we put that on the label. Because some of us drank it like, yeah, no problem. We give it to somebody else. They're like, oh, it's horrible. And it isn't. I mean, I love it, but we'll let you guys decide on that. And of course, we love the pleiotropic effects that they have under the right conditions. They have an amazing array of things that they're beneficial for. Now, this also has its own story because we have a full breadth of testing we do before we do anything. And now we've moved that testing even more critical. So we're looking now at aflatoxins, and we're developing more, even glyphosate and so on. We're getting more and more. Well, I can tell you it's a scary story, and the reason many of you didn't get this product before its launch, because when we bought these and we sourced from a number of suppliers, the first batch that came in failed heavy metal testing. Miserably. Like scary. So we started testing other people's products. And clearly not everybody tests. Because there's only so many manufacturers of these things. And some of those manufacturers don't seem to know that heavy metals exist on the planet. And they can get into things if you're not careful. So we had to reject the whole first batch until we found a much more reliable supplier. So that's the nice thing about the lab knows within 48 hours when we buy something whether it's safe or not. So that's kind of fun. But that did delay it because we packed it up, sent it back to them, and waited till new samples came, and we really vet. I don't know if we vet the suppliers. And then when you start getting a relationship with these suppliers, which we do, we then will travel to them and visit, make sure that there's not just some garage. It's like, yeah, this is my garage of stuff, and I get it from, I can't pick on any country, but that happens, right? I don't want to pick on anybody, but things like that happen. So we have to vet everything quite nicely. But it's a pretty simple formula. It's all BHBs and the ester. Pretty straightforward. I want you to taste it. What else I want to tell you before we get to the, okay, this is my microbiome piece. Remember I told you, microbiome? I don't know if you guys have tried this, and I tried this with a couple of people at work, and I don't think we had them deeply enough into ketosis, and I tried it myself, and I wasn't enough into it. But if you guys want to try this for me, or Pump, or anybody, you might have tried this for me, there is an element that I haven't talked about yet, and maybe we'll cover it in our game. However, fiber is a missing component to being coming out of a fast or being in ketosis. We drive that fat protein piece so hard that over long periods of time, it's extremely detrimental to the microbiome. It really is. And my theory is that we could use something like FBR, a really complex, large carbohydrates. We can use that formula, and it's called ketotarian, and I think people are trying it in other ways, to increase the benefit of the microbiome during a long period and not bring you out of any of your fasting or your ketosis. Does that make sense? But I think that's an incredible aspect that we're missing. And I can promise you that the longer we're in any of these stages, the worse it is on the microbiome. For a little while, it's great because you're cleansing, you're cutting back on some of the herd, right? You're thinning the herd. But long periods of time, you're really causing yourself some grief over long periods of time. And it can actually reverse for a lot of women. It causes them to, ketosis and these things can cause weight gain and hormonal dysregulation. So this is a critical part. And again, I won't cover a lot of that. I'll be laid out to other speakers, the amazing speakers we're going to have. So that's an experiment I want to do that someone's deep into ketosis and try them on fiber. So if you guys don't do it, I'm going to do it, and then we'll post the results on a webcast or something. I'll give you a webcast. Because I suspect it won't change, but it'll alter your microbiome after you've gone through the process to get there. you'll re-heal the microbiome in a good way. And furthermore, it'll bring us some insights into how to maybe modify some of the FBR and other things that we know are complex carbs to improve the behavior of your microbiome under extreme conditions. So it actually could lead us to some nice changes. I'll let you read that, but it's kind of fun because we know the microbiome is responsible for maintaining natural normal butyrate or ketone production in this part of your body anyway, as well as the other neuropeptides and so on. That was a side note. This, I'm not going to hit you guys with this. This is something fun. We all need to, if you want to test it, this is easy. It's cheap. And that's how we're going to track it for the example. And then when and why, again, this is something that Dr. Topomp has presented 20,000 times on. Okay, so I want to thank you guys. Before we get into the game, I want to thank you all because you guys make our life wonderful and exciting and fun, and we love to do this for you guys. In fact, the entire company loves to do this for you guys. They're so excited. You'd be amazed at when they know we're going to be interacting with you. It's fun to see them all change. Oh yeah, let's flavor this, or they'll even like put themselves in your shoes. No, I don't think they'll like this. I like it, but I don't think they will. It's fun to get that interaction with everybody at Systemic. It is a family environment. It really is. It's an amazing environment. And then finally to them. So I thank them because it is the family that makes it all go around. Now we're going to hand out samples. The actual product is really big. So the Ketabo is going to be a really big jar. And, I'm not that generous. You don't get the whole big jar, all of you. And the other one's a tub. Now, there's a couple of other factors while you're passing this out, and then you're going to need water to play with it, so you can't play with it yet. You can just dip your finger in it, maybe. There's a couple number of practical business elements I want to touch on. One is the rest of this weekend. I want each and every one of you to ask the speakers, either in your mind or out loud, how can I use these two products and what you've just taught me? How can I incorporate what Shayne told you today into everybody's talk? If you can't do that, then we're missing something, because you ought to be able to parlay this information and these products into your protocols after this weekend. It is our goal as a company to teach you how to implement these products into each protocol. Does that make sense? And I want I'm now making you responsible to make sure each speaker does just that for you, so that no talk goes by without you knowing how to use the product in their talk. Is that clear? Okay, that's your job. Secondly, we did our best. I think we have really good price points, competitive price points. So when you guys see these, the price points are good. We got, there's a big supply for a great price. I'm not going to know exactly, but one's around 27, the other one's about 28. Wholesale. So retail, and they're big. Some of them give you more doses than most people, like the exogenous ketones. It can be as many as 30 doses, and you're still getting like 8 grams. If you do 16 grams, which is high, I think it's 16 doses. It goes up to 32. So we're on the upper end on dose, and we tried to keep the price very competitive for you all. And that doesn't even include the discount you'd be getting this weekend. That's regular. Yeah, so this weekend you get a discount. Yeah. All right, we ready for the game before my time is up? This is the Clinical Pearls game, and I expect everybody to help out, because it's my opinion that some of you are going to know the answers about this way better than I do. So this is really a test. Where's my slide? Wait, it's not a slide. What am I doing? I'm going to do it on a piece of paper. You guys, get your piece of paper out. I forgot I didn't have a slide. Tyson's laughing at me. Yeah. One pagers? Yeah, so there's 2 products and 2 product sheets that describe those products. There's one on the extracellular ketones and one on the Ketabo shake. Hey, for fun, internally to the company, we debated Ketabo shake. How does that sit with you guys? I think it's a 50-50 split at back and forth. People are like, that's dumb. Or other people are like, yeah, I like it. Yay, nay. You know what we came across it from? Metabo. We had Metabo and Ketabo. Yeah, we're real creative. it's going to be two of the exact ones that are found. One is in MB and one is in ECM. Yeah. There are a total of, I think, 4 different collagens, 4 in the MB and 6 in the EC. So it's 2 of those. Yeah. And we chose them based on, we get our collagen from one of the biggest, most clinically studied producers of collagen. So there's a lot of clinical studies behind the collagens in collagen MB, collagen ECM, and now Ketabo. Highly, highly studied collagens. A lot of clinical studies behind them. For the purposes, some for skin, some are for joints, some are for muscle. Okay, now you guys, we're going to do the game, and it's going to be, I got to use my computer and cheat because I didn't make the slide in time. And we only have to play the game until my time runs out. So we have 3 hours. I'm kidding. Okay, this is a fun one because I want you guys to tell me. I have notes on here, and I'll tell you my notes when I write it up. This one is really protocoling. This is a way for you guys to understand how to use these. It's a way for me to understand. That's not even in there. All right, it's broken. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's just 1 serving each, I believe. It's a serving of each, 1 serving of each. Yeah. Well, I did that. About the sour? I did that already. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oftentimes, if you guys, exogenous ketones, as I mentioned, you can overdo it. Well, people that have never done them, start slow because it can cause GI discomfort for people that have never done exogenous ketones. So if you just take the whole serving, you've never done it, and drink it, you might be like, oh, what did Shayne do? He doesn't like me. Yep. Yeah, so just start small. I'm really giving it to that for you guys to not, you're not going to be in ketosis after you eat both of those, I can promise you. However, it's just a taste. So you could even just take a little bit of it, taste it, sip it, throw it away. Because I just wanted you guys to have an idea of what that product was all about. All right, so game number 1, while you're playing with your thing. That was an accident. I did not do that on purpose. What would be an amazing protocol to get somebody into ketosis? Think of some of systemic formulas when you want to get somebody into ketosis. So what's a protocol to initiate ketosis? A protocol, what? All right, let's hear it. So initiating ketosis. Oops. Okay. Speaking of that, so then what products would go along with that? And keep in mind, we'll do detox later, so don't think about detox. What kind? Sinulin? Sorry? Sinulin, what else? What other product would go along with that? Ketabo? I put Ketabo. Ketabo. I also put, for some people, exogenous, the extracellular ketones for some people. I'm going to put Exo. Mores could work, especially if we're worried about the nutrient. Yeah, that shouldn't conflict with that. We have to be careful on the fasting, but not on ketosis, yes. Min, another good one. I also have ALG, or algae, an omega-3. And I do that only because it's a smaller dose, and when you're putting somebody in ketosis and they're high omega-6s and 9s, a little bit of 3 actually helps package those in the micelles you're eating them. So it's a very different purpose in that case. L can be good as well. Yep. Huh? Yeah, that would work in place of algae too if we could do that, Vista 2. Okay, let's do another game or another question. Protocol to enter fasting state. What would be the protocol to get into a fasting state? So we want to initiate fasting. Are you guys writing this down? Okay. You better be, because I can't remember. And my handwriting, I didn't write everything down, so you're not going to get anything from me. How do we want to initiate fasting? What's a good thing to do before you get into a fasting state? What's the main? I'm going to just give you one answer. Get into ketosis first. Get into ketosis first. So all the same answers we just gave, do that again prior to going into a fast. Is there any downside to that? Am I missing anything? Okay. So That arrow goes to there. Get into ketosis. How about, how do we want to refeed or break a fast? What do we want to do to our body when we're going to break a fast? Or a refeed when you're in the middle of, let's say, an intermittent and you're refeeding. FBR, love that. So I'm going to call it so we call it breakfast, right? Break. I love FBR. That's good. Love FBR. What else do we want to do in refeeding? What's happening after a fast? Dr. Pompa's talked about this a lot, and I think many of you, Mindy Pelz has talked about this to some degree. Refeeding. What do we want to do when we're going to break a fast? What kind of supplements, not product, but supplements, should we be concerned about? Healthy bacteria. What else? What are we going to be needing when we come out of a fast? What's going to be happening to our body? Growth hormone's up, isn't it? Now, if we're interested in building muscle, what should we do? Yeah, protein. We could do Metabo. What did you say? Collagen MB. Exactly. If you want to build, because remember, mTOR can be turned on coming out of a fast. We don't want to turn it on during the fast, but coming out of a fast, you can turn on mTOR and start building. You can start creating collagen. Yeah, K could be good. Exactly. What else did I have, just in case? I had Spectra 1 and 2. We're going to be nutrient depleted. And remember, during fasting, we're not going to be doing a lot of we're not going to be doing a lot of supplementation. So coming out of the fast, you're going to want to add high-quality nutrients. Spectra 1 and 2 could be a good call for that. Collagen 1 and 2, microbiome, yep. It's even more critical to do this when your fast is gone for multiple weeks at a time. If it's just an intermittent, this isn't as critical, but if you've gone days and days, 10, 2 weeks, this is more critical. And there's new research out, and I wish I could remember the author of the publications, showing that if you don't take care of the nutrients and do it slowly, there's a rebound effect for people that have been in prolonged fasting states. If you rush things too quickly, like mTOR and that, you get a rebound. And you'll almost fight against what you were trying to do coming out of the fast. So you got to be careful for prolonged fasting. Side note. What about, now it's going to be similar for refeeding in ketosis, is it not? There's a lot of similarity there, because there's a lot of similarities between ketosis and fasting. What are we going to do for detox while in ketosis? I already gave you the answer to that, right? So bind what else? What have we done 5,000 of? Prep, body, brain. Yeah. A lot of people have done that already. We have a lot of data there. What do we do if while we're getting into ketosis or fasting and our cortisol levels rise? Which happens. GA. Well done. Okay, so I'm going to do stress, because cortisol does rise temporarily. What's one of the other things that with a rising cortisol, what's one of the things that can happen for many people getting into either fast state or ketosis? You can't sleep. DREM, thank you. Cortisol. So I got DREM, GA, what else? Anybody? Ooh, I didn't even think of that myself. Calm, thank you. All right, let's do another one because I'm burning my time. Let's see. So it also can raise estrogen, mostly in women. Remember the KISS peptide? So what should we do there? Yeah, I got Femocrine. I've got F+. Femocrine, F+. So let's do estrogen. Estrogen. So we want to do F+, Femocrine. It suppresses T3. What do we do there? Ooh, that's interesting. GF. So we down T3. Now this is scary because T4 and TSH don't change. So there's some new theories out here that I want to throw at you guys. Although GF would still work, by the way, under this new idea. So one of the things T3 is responsible for is sugar metabolism. So your innate intelligence drives down T3 a little bit because you have no glucose. So this could merely be, or part of this decreased T3, especially in women, because a lot of women, when these tests come out, they worry about their thyroid. It's pre-hypothyroidism. If you just look at the data, in fact, it may not be that at all. It may just be that T3 drops because there's no sugar around. One of T3's jobs is to maintain sugar metabolism. So this could just be an artifact, potentially. It's just an idea I want to throw out there. It wasn't my idea, by the way. That was somebody else's idea. Let's see. I thought it was clever. What about ketosis? Being in ketosis or being in a fasted state can drive up pH of blood and other body fluids. Ooh, who said that? APHA, that's a tough one. So I'm going to do pH and APHA. That's kind of a sleeper. How many of you guys know about APHA? Well done, APHA. Right on. Let's do another one. Keto raises leptin and appetite suppression. And we don't want to introduce BCAAs. What can we add to our fasting state, or mostly ketosis state, to drive up some energy production? The energy. And if you're in a fasted state, you can't, because we don't want to kick out autophagy, but we're imagining ketosis. But what else? What else do you get today? So exogenous ketones, or extracellular ketones, right? So I'm going to talk about, we're going to call it appetite. So exo keto. My writing is terrible, isn't it? Let's do another one. Let's see. We want to remain in a catabolic state, not an anabolic, in an anabolic state, not a catabolic state. We don't want to lose muscle, so what should we refeed to not have muscle depletion? And this is more extended, not shrunk times, but extended. Protein. Which proteins do we have? Collagen MB would be a good one. You could even use ECM under this circumstance. So for muscle. Now, Eventa is a good one too. Thank you. Eventa and collagen. And the muscle box. Okay, let's see. Now, we deplete a lot of nutrients as I went through the whole pathways. What are some of the nutrient-dense formulas that we have? Spectra 1 and 2? Oh, Excel, thank you. So I'm going to call this nutrients. So we have Spectra 1 and 2. We have Excel therapeutic, great one. What else? Nutrient-dense. AZV. What else are we lacking? So those are all the micronutrients. I would also argue that we need to add some good fats back, some more unique fats. So we need either RPM or alg. And that's been shown to be more and more important. You wouldn't think of those fats as being important in this process, but it's showing the data is pointing more and more towards get some omega-3s. You can also use plant omega-3s or the alpha-linoleic acid. It's hard to come by by itself. It's more in the mixture of an omega-9, omega-6 profile in plants like borage, but it is high in that borage that I used in the Ketabo. But having omega-3s drives up the efficacy of the other fats in ketosis or fasting states. So the omega-3s are big here. So I would say alg and RPM. CVO would be as good as RPM. Yeah, whoever said that. You could use Vista here. Vista has a profile that is 4 to 1, I believe. So it's heavier on the omega-9s and 6s than it is the 3s. It's got the heart profile. And the phospholipid, yep. So the Vista 1 soft gel would be brilliant here. The Vista 1 soft gel would be great here because that's phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, and phosphatidylinositol. So yes, Vista 1 would be great here. Vista 1. I'm running out of room, but I still have a few questions. All right, let's see. What's another good one for you guys? Okay, so in ketosis, we still have this basal level of gluconeogenesis, and there's no way around that. Your body is brilliant. It's going to convert lactic acid. If you're exercising, it's going to convert the glycerol from triglycerides, and all the little carbs we mention in anything. You don't take carbs away to zero. There's no way you go to zero on carbs, correct? Every carb that you are still eating in either a rotating fast or ketogenesis or a ketogenic cycle, you're still bringing those carbs in, and they're being stored as glycogen. Why? Because your body loves to have a reserve in the muscles, all muscles, as well as a little bit in the liver. And it will maintain those levels even under the highest ketogenic situations. You can still store glycogen from those three processes. And protein, what you want to do is you want to give the body enough, though, a little bit of carb refeeds or amino acid refeeds to get that there. What in our protocol or our products should we do to get just a little bit of that carb in there to refeed or to keep that up during this cycle? What do we have? We have something called Pro, might work, BCAAs. What else? Fiber. Someone said fiber because I think I said this before. I have Pro, fiber, and a little bit of I have Pro, fiber, and a little bit of collagen MB. Metabo would work here too. A small dose of Metabo for people if they're refeeding during this process. You can do a little Metabo. It would have that same effect to keep a little bit of glycogen stores. So we just want gluconeogenesis. So I got Metab, Pro, Call, what else did I say? FBR, yeah. Little complex carb or a little bit of protein. And none of those have really been shown in the papers I came across to kick you out of either of those states. If you do little doses, you are refeeding gluconeogenesis and you're not losing the state that you're in terms of ketosis or the fasting state you're in. You don't lose it. Body's pretty brilliant in that sense. Okay, we're almost done, you guys. School's almost over. Oh, I did want to say that the Corey, any nerds in the room? The cycle where we convert lactate to glucose is called the Corey cycle. I just want to make sure you guys knew that. I need you to write that down. Okay? If you expect to graduate at the end of this weekend, you're going to have to know that. Yes? Oh, the muscle cream. Yeah, muscle cream. Well, I'm going to put it down here. You heard her, so you guys know muscle cream. We love that muscle cream. It's kind of a little secret of ours, but we have had a lot of good anecdotal data coming from groups of athletes we've given it to try and get the feedback on. We've had amazing results come back on that. And you guys remember, that's organic. There's no phthalates or any of the bad compounds in it. It's really green. It's really a clean formula. So it's kind of a sleeper. It's really, but it's useful. We use it all the time for different experiments. Let's see. Okay, what's the one organ? This is more of just a question. What's the one organ that cannot undergo beta oxidation of fatty acids? This is the brain. You guys feel like you're in school now? All right. What do we want to use exogenous ketones during exercise for? Why would we even consider them? In different kinds of exercise, they can be used differentially through high intensity muscle building or, long endurance. Thank you. Yeah, they can be used in all places. They can help drive up those exogenous ketones, and there's those benefits that you get from them. That's again another question. Ooh, here we go. Extended ketosis or fasting. This is my last question. 9 months or more, there's a new phenomenon called the ketogenic or the fasting wall. Of course, 9 months, that's intermittent fasting, not straight fasting. You're hitting what's called the ketogenic wall. And I've mentioned over and over again what that really is because of. Do you guys remember? Bad fats, lack of nutrients, both micro and macro, meaning the minerals as well as the vitamins and et cetera. What can we do to prevent that from your standpoint? What products can we use? Because what happens when they look at the blood markers, by the way, I should say this is important to the question. When you look at people's blood markers after they've been poorly fighting this and getting to the wall after 9 months plus, it's 9 months plus, their blood markers are horribly inflamed. They're horribly inflamed people. They've got oxidative stress markers, they've got CRP high, they've got everything elevated in the opposite direction that you would expect from what we believe and trust in the fasting ketogenic or the metabolic flexible cycles. They're the exact opposite. What do we do to bring them back into health? What formulas? Spectra? Pardon? Min. How about ROX? Epic. Both of those are anti-inflammatory. High doses of RPM have shown to work in those. Small high doses for short run. So like 15 days, 10 capsules a day. Brings down inflammation dramatically. That's the resolvins, protectins, and merisins at work. Could. Yeah, there could be a lot of other, yeah. So you do need to watch for pathogens, watch for all those things for sure, yeah. That is it, you guys. We have done it. So taste those, give me feedback. Give everybody feedback on the taste profile, the organoleptic pieces. Once you have access to water, make it, taste it, give me feedback, give all of CAST. I want to thank, CAST is so great about this. We've got the marketing and the sales and all the CAST. They are subjected to every single taste test that you guys are subjected to 20 times. They're great about it. They go home and have diarrhea. It's not a big deal. It's the microbiome. It's all good. So please give us feedback because we're really excited to launch this. By the time the show's over and you guys go back to the office is when we're going to start preparing the orders to ship these out. Okay. Well done. Thanks.